And thank you very much. Thank you very much for your patience, for the station identification problems we've been having. Okay, tonight's topic is definitely fascinating, but it's very difficult for me. Why? Because this is a difficult concept.
Rabbi Lashak, we can't hear you so well now, right? It was good, and then it got very faded. Rabbi Lashak, are you with us? Okay, I could read your lips saying that you're here, but we cannot hear you. All right. In the meantime, I'll play more Jewish geography. Schneur, I feel like I know you also from something. Did you do bike and CSY or something?
I did do bike and CSY.
Ah, I knew it. Good
Although
to
in
see you again.
2020.
Oh, the COVID year.
Yes, sir.
Well, that was the year that, yeah, it was like we did everything scattered across the whole country. Like there were different locations. Well, glad you could join us then and now. Where are you from?
Miami.
Ooh, got another Floridian on the call. Although I guess Gainesville is really the opposite of Miami, right? Almost as far as you could get.
Although I'm pretty sure I know the other Florida people here.
Yeah. I'm from South Florida, so we were in the same chapter.
Uh-huh.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Okay, is it loud? Is it good?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, I brought the big microphone. So, okay. Thank you very much for your patience. Everybody's excited for this topic. It's an amazing, fascinating topic. For you guys, it's a lot of fun. For me, it's very difficult because this is a complicated subject. So it's going to be a little bit different than most classes that I've given you. So hopefully it'll come out nice. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid teilatecha la'asod nachat ruach leyotzreinu. When you hear of witchcraft, probably you think of Harry Potter, or you think of these amazing books. I've been reading a book that my son has been begging me to read now for 12 years. I finally started reading it, and it's amazing. It's called The Name of the Wind. Anybody knows what I'm talking about? Rothfuss, amazing book, and fascinating stuff. It really is incredible stuff. There is a lot of imagination, and there's definitely, fascinating. So I want to tell you in the next 25, 30 minutes, what is witchcraft? What really is this concept? What does Judaism say about it? And if we believe in such a thing. So the first thing I want to tell you is there are three types of people in the world. There are what we called the serious, rational people. And they just laugh it off. They say, this is absolutely ridiculous. Don't even waste my time. I'll watch a good movie, but that's it. There is a second type of group, which is what they call, for example, the poetic or artistic, and they absolutely love it. They love it. This is amazing. They have tarot cards, crystal balls, readings. They love all this stuff. There is a third group of people, which is what they call the very deeply religious. Yes, and these people believe there is basically two powers in the world. There is the power of good and there is the power of evil, and they're constantly fighting amongst each other. This is what very religious believe. They believe there is a good and there is an evil, or there is a God and there is a Satan, and they're constantly fighting against each other. Now, in Judaism, we do not agree with either of the three ways of thinking. We do not agree with any of them. Let me tell you what Judaism says, and then we can start exploring everything. In Judaism, we do not believe there is a God and there is Satan, and they're fighting against each other. In Judaism, we believe there is only one power, and it's the power of God, the creator of the world. And this Satan does exist, but the Satan is an angel that works for God. Let me explain that. I once had a teacher in high school that we used to love. Everybody loved this teacher. He was our geography teacher. Everybody loved him. And then one day they made him the assistant principal. The next day, everybody hated him. Is he a bad person? Absolutely not. He was stuck with a bad job. So everybody loves this teacher. But the next day he becomes the assistant principal, and everybody knows here an assistant principal, his job is to send people home or whatever, punish. And so everybody loved him, but he was stuck with a bad job. After a while, everybody forgot what a nice guy he was, and everybody was talking bad about him. He's still a nice guy, he's just stuck with a bad job. The creator of the world, Borei Olam Yishtabach Shemo, created a system where he has all kinds of angels that work for him. And there is one angel called the Satan. And the Satan works for God, but he's stuck with a bad job. So let me recap. There is no such a thing as two powers, God and Satan, or God and evil. There was a religion, actually still exists, it's very small today in the world, but it was the big religion before Abraham. It was called Zoroastrianism. This is what they believed. There was good and bad, and they fought against each other. And the good have angels, and the bad have witchcraft, and the good have prophets, and the bad have sorcerers, and that's what they believed. There's no such a thing. There is only one power, ein od milbado. There is only power, the power of God. And this God, believe it or not, has 7 heavens, and on top of the 7 heavens, there are 2 thrones. There is the throne of judgment, and there is the throne of mercy. And sometimes the same God, the master of the universe, sometimes he sits in the throne of judgment, and sometimes he sits in the throne of mercy. That's it. And the proof is, please raise your hand. And if I could see faces, please, at least for 2 minutes, please, that I can see your hand, at least for 2 minutes, show me your faces and your hands. Most of you, I assume you've heard of the prayer Shema Israel. Please raise your hand if you've heard the concept of Shema Israel. Shema Israel is probably the battle cry of Judaism. It's a very, very important prayer. There are only 2 prayers that are from the Torah. This is one of them. And it goes like this: Shema Israel, hear, O Israel, Hashem Elokeinu, and it uses 2 names of God: Hashem, the God of mercy; Elokeinu, the God of judgment. Hashem Echad is the same God. The most important prayer in Judaism is saying that we do not believe in Zoroastrianism. We're saying Shema Israel, hear, O nation of Israel, Hashem, the God of mercy; Elokeinu, the God of judgment, equals Hashem Echad, only one God. So yes, the God who created beautiful islands, yes, is the same God who creates tsunamis, and he creates hurricanes and may come and harm those islands, those beautiful islands. The same God who created those beautiful islands may bring one day a tsunami who may harm that island. Hashem Echad is the same God. Okay, that's the first thing you have to understand. This is very important. So what is witchcraft? I'm going to tell you first. I'm going to tell you how it works in the world. I'm about to tell you very heavy duty stuff. So please try to follow with me. It's very difficult, but But if you follow with me, hopefully we'll understand a lot. Now, you and I live in what we call the physical world. There are four worlds, actually. There is the physical world, which is you and I live in the physical world. Then there is another world that we can also see and we can also touch, which is what we call the nature. We walk around, we see the mountains, we see the oceans, you know, we see lightning, we see tsunamis. That's what we call nature. There is a third world, which is what we call the supernatural world. And that's where we have, where people, you could use witchcraft, so to speak, or you could have, you know, blessings. A giant, a holy man can give you a blessing and actually change many things. This is the world of the supernatural. So there is the physical world where you and I live. There is the natural world, which is a little higher than us, so to speak, which is what we call nature. Then there is something called the supernatural world where witchcraft or blessings or prophets can exist. And then there is a fourth level, which is the divine. The divine is only for God. That's one. We start with the highest divine, that's God. The second one is what we call angels and demons, the supernatural world, prophets, demons, warlocks, witchcraft, high priest, blessings. Then we have nature, and then we have at the lowest one, we have what we call physical. So the first, the third and fourth world, the physical and the nature, you and I are very, very accustomed to. We see it, we touch it, we feel it, we hear it. You hear thunderstorm, you understand the ocean, the waves. You are afraid of the tremendous power of the ocean. That's all that. What we call physical and nature is something we're accustomed to. We live in incredible boring times. I know everybody's looking at me right now like, what? What do you mean? We have iPhones, we have iPads, we have Netflix, we have, what are you talking? We have Zoom, we get on cruise ships, some people, you know, just take rockets to the moon. What do you mean we live in incredible boring worlds? Yes, even though you may own a Tesla, we live in incredible boring worlds. Because today you only really get to touch these two worlds, the natural, the physical and the natural. It used to be that if you lived in the times of King David, or you lived in the times of Moses, or you lived in the times of Abraham, you could have lived in the times where supernatural worlds were around every day. You understand? King David and Moses had to fight Balaam, the greatest sorcerer that ever lived. We're told how Moses had to kill a giant, and he had to fly into heavens and actually kill the giant, so to speak. So we live in incredible boring times. Why? Let me explain that. These two worlds have been removed from us, so to speak. We only have today physical and nature, and the worlds that used to exist, the divine, you'll never see the divine really, but the supernatural world has been taken away from us. I always tell people, I wish I could live in the time of King David, because King David in that time, people were so holy, but because they were so holy, they had a temple, they had a high priest, they had offerings, they had incredible miracles happening the whole time. But what happens is the world must always be in equal balance of purity and impurity. And because there was a temple, there was witchcraft. And because there were prophets, there was tremendous evil. And because there was angels, there were demons. And because there were, you understand, the world must always be in an equal level of power. And because there was so much, they had a temple, they had idolatry. And therefore the world has to be equal for us to have free will and free choice to make decisions. Otherwise, how could we be rewarded and punished? So they took away the temple, so they had to take away idolatry. They took away the prophet, so they had to take away demons. They took away they took away blessings and offerings and high priest. So they took away a lot of the things that what we call today witchcraft and sorcery. So really that does not exist anymore. Did it exist? Yes, it did exist. Was there such a thing as witchcraft? Absolutely. Was there such a thing as sorcery and Wicca? Absolutely. Do these powers actually exist in the world? Absolutely. Can you and I really get to them? No, really. No. You would have to find someone who learned from their mother or father, who learned from their mother and father, and it would have to be from generation to generation to generation. Are there people like that in the world? Probably, yes. Few of them, maybe 10, 12, 15 of them in the world. Are they going to sit with you and start telling you how to change worlds? No, absolutely not. Are they going to sell their knowledge for money? Maybe one or two of them, but really that power doesn't exist. So what happens is we live in boring times because we don't have. So today the Rambam says, Maimonides says, we don't have demons. So demons were around because we had a temple, because we had a high priest, because we had blessings. And now because we don't have demons, there is really no witchcraft. And because we have no witchcraft, there is really no sorcery. But did it exist? Absolutely. There was such a thing because there were four worlds. We had the world, which is the world, what we call the physical, the nature, the supernatural, and the divine. So we humans were able to be, we were able to be close to three worlds. Today, one world has been removed and we only have really two worlds. Okay, if you have any questions or comments, just write them down and I'll let you ask questions later on. I'm just going to move on, okay? So that's something very, very important that today we really do not have. Now, I'm not saying there is no witchcraft left in the world. There is very little, very few people who learned it from their father, from generation to generation. But they're really not going to sit with you at a Starbucks and say to you, hi, come over here. Let me teach you how to turn water into gold. Let me teach you how to fly. No, there's no such a thing. Nobody's teaching you that today. Okay. Now, why is, you should know in Judaism, this is absolutely forbidden. A Jew may not do witchcraft. Even if you would find somebody to teach it to you, you wouldn't be able to do so. You're not allowed to, as a Jew, to learn this. You're not allowed to perform these things. Why? Why is Judaism so against this? So you have to understand the following. This is very important. I'm going to try my best to do right. I told you that people believe there is two powers, God and Satan. So you already know that Zoroastrianism, that already since the time of Abraham, very few people believe that. Most of the world believes, 7 out of 10 people in the world believe there is one God and there is something, an angel stuck with a bad job named Satan who works for God. And yes, he's stuck with a bad job, which sometimes he has to kill people, so to speak, or sometimes he has to do certain things that look evil, but he's listening to the words of God, because the same God who sits in a throne of judgment, sometimes he sits in a throne of mercy, and sometimes there has to be equal balance in the world. That's, you know, already. So let me explain you a lot of things. When a person believes, let me explain you how idol worshiping, let me explain you how witchcraft would work. This is very Kabbalistic. I'm going to try my best to explain this. Imagine that, listen, I'm a 53-year-old guy, you know. If I go on the street and I see 4 big guys waiting for me at the end of the street and they're going to beat me up or rob me, I would run as fast as I can because, you know, I'm not in my prime anymore. Maybe when I was a little younger, I could box a little bit. Maybe I could take one guy, two guys. There's no way today at my age, I'm going to try to take four guys down. Not such a thing. But what if I would approach one of them? Let's say I would remember my jiu-jitsu. And let's say I would approach the guy at the front. And let's say I could wrestle away his gun. And now I have the only gun. Can you imagine such a thing? There's four guys, but one is at the front. I come and I play like, you know, I'm not so smart and I, you know, play like an idiot. And suddenly when he's not really paying attention, the only guy who has the gun, I look that way, he looks that way, I take away the gun, and I'm suddenly holding the gun and I can face the four guys. That is what people who believe in witchcraft and sorcery today believe they can do. They believe that God has a gun, so to speak, very powerful tools, and you as a human being have the ability to wrestle that gun away or that tool away from God, and you can use it to even intimidate God if you wanted to. That is why it's forbidden, because you are believing that you can have power over God. That's ridiculous. Ain't no milbado. There is no other power than God. Not such a thing. There's nothing. If God would close his eyes, so to speak, and stop thinking about planet Earth would cease to exist. Just for 1 second. Ain't no milbado. There's no other power but the power of God. So people believe in witchcraft or these things, believe that, listen, there is a God, but I can wrestle away that tool, that gun that he has, and I can use it against him, or I can use it to do whatever I want. I can turn this liquid into gold, or I can turn this forest into a palace, or I can walk up to heaven, or whatever it is, or walk on water, or whatever it is that you want to do. Okay, please, if you have questions, write them down. I'm going to take all your questions. I'm just going to move on a little bit more. Now, I'm going to tell you different sources in Judaism to prove to you that we do believe in witchcraft, to prove to you that there was such a thing as witchcraft. I'll bring you many, many proofs from different parts of the Talmud and different places, but today really does not exist. Or if it exists, it's very small and almost non-existent. So I'm going to tell you lots of different things. When Moses and the Jews left Egypt, they started complaining to God, and they started doing a lot of horrible things in the desert. And God they actually, so to speak, tested God 10 times. We're told in the Torah that the Jewish nation misbehaved 10 times. And one of those times, it was a really horrible, the way they were acting against Moses and God. Then God got very upset. And what did he do, God? He sent serpents, snakes, into the Machane, into where the Jews were living in the desert. And the snakes were killing a lot of the Jews. And the Jews started screaming to God, to Moses, please help us, please help us. And Moses turns around to God and says, how do I save these people? And God said, very simple. I want you and Aaron to make, your brother, I want you to make a snake made out of copper. And I want you to put the snake made out of copper in a banner. And I want you to lift it up and tell every Jew to look up the snake in top of the banner. And as long as they look at the snake made out of copper in top of the banner, they will be healed. And that's what happened. So the Talmud asks, so what healed him? Was it a snake made out of copper that everybody looked up? He says, no, that's ridiculous. What happens is they looked up to heaven because the banner was very tall, and on top of it was the snake made out of copper. And when they looked at heaven, so it's like by raising their head up to heaven, they were praying to God, and so God healed them. It wasn't the snake, it wasn't made out of copper. By the way, today, if you go to Turkey or if you go to Mozambique, I've been in all these places all over the world. If you go to Guatemala, if you go to the Antarctica, by the way, there's many different types of banners with a snake and a copper, and all of them have to do with medicine. It is a symbol of medicine all over the world. Maybe Nicole can find something in the computer there that shows you different snakes and whatever it is, and she can show us later on. But all over the world, some of them have green behind it, some of them are red behind it, be it as it may. It is a medicine symbol today all over the world. The snake made out of copper in top of a banner. Many doctors that walk around, I have 3 children, and my 3 children are nurses, and they get a pin. As a matter of fact, I'm going on June 27th to New York City because my son is graduating and he's getting it's called the pinning. They're pinning on him. What do you think they're pinning on him? They're pinning on him a little beautiful little silver snake made out of copper, and they pin it to him, and that's what it means. That's how he becomes a nurse, by getting this pin, and they pin it on him. And wow, what a wonder! It's actually a snake made in top of a copper. So what happened is there was a famous king, later on a very righteous king named Chizkiyahu, and what Chizkiyahu did is took this famous snake made out of copper and he burned it. He got rid of it. So the Talmud says, why would such a righteous king like Chizkiyahu get rid of this incredible thing that was healing all these people? And the answer is because everybody started to believe, the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren believed that they forgot that their parents, their grandparents had told them that was God, the one who healed them in the desert. And they started believing that this snake actually was an idol. And idol worshiping began even among the Jewish nations. So what did the King Chizkiyahu do? He burned it. So you see incredible things that have sometimes something so beautiful and something was supposed to bring it too close to God, but the children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren was misunderstood, and this was eventually turned into Avodah Zarah, into idol worshiping. I'm going to tell you many, 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 many fast stories, very, very fast, because I don't want you because I want you to show you the Judaism witchcraft, and there was such a power. So I'll give you different explanations. By the way, if you study Exodus and the 3 plagues, and we're going to get to Passover soon, and you're going to learn in Passover about the first 3 plagues: dam, blood; Tzfardea, frogs; Kinim, lice. The warlocks of Pharaoh in Egypt used sorcery and witchcraft to make blood, to make Tzfardea, frogs, and Kinim, lice. But after that, they were not able to do anything after that. Why? Because even Kinim, they weren't able to do. Why? Because lice is very small. And witchcraft has no power on something very small. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to explain you something else, and then I'll tell you stories. Everything in the world has an angel. Have you ever heard that, for example, does anybody, please raise your hand if you know what a tangerine is, for example? Does anybody know what a cran apple is? Raise your hand. Have you ever seen, sometimes you go to a beautiful store and they sell these weird fruits that are like, they look to be 2 or 3 fruits that were merged into one? Yes? They're called grafting. Now, grafting in Judaism is forbidden. You're not allowed to. We Jews are not allowed to make tangerines. Am I allowed to go into the store and buy a tangerine? Yes. Can I enjoy it? Yes. Can I make a tangerine in my backyard? No. Why? Why is God against making grafting 2 species? Why is that so wrong? Why is God against putting wool and linen together? Why is God against, by the way, mixing animals? How do you make a mule? You take a horse and a donkey, you put them together, and you make a mule. I was at a zoo the other day with NCSY, and everybody was blown away because we saw a zonkey. You know what a zonkey is? A zebra and a donkey. They put the zebra and a donkey together, and they made a zonkey. Very strange animal, very weird animal, very good-looking animal. But we Jews are allowed to go to the zoo and watch it. We're not allowed to make zonkies. You're not, as a Jew, you're not allowed to take two species and put them together, graft them together, and create a new species. Why? Why is God against that? So let me explain something to you. This is very, very heavy, but you guys are brilliant. So here goes. Believe it or not, when God created oranges, he created an angel to protect the oranges. When he made apples, he created an angel to protect the apples. When you take, how do you make a tangerine? Maybe somebody, an orange and anybody? Okay. Anybody?
I just Googled it and it said mandarin and pimento.
Oh, thank you so much, Claire. So you have an orange and a mandarin. So there is an angel for a mandarin. There's an angel for an orange. I have news for you. When you put them together and you create a tangerine, there is no angel for it. You have just created a species that God did not create. So therefore, there is no protection. It's not that God is upset because you created a new species that he didn't create. God is not jealous and he's saying, only I can create species. It's just that God is worried that you created a species that has no protection. There is no angel to protect it. And therefore, you are creating things that you have no idea what would happen to them or what powers they could have on their own because there is no angel to protect them. So that's a tremendous concept you have to understand. It's very important to understand. And there is something similar to that to witchcraft. You may not create things on your own that were not created from the beginning. So when you start using supernatural powers to start to combine things and creating things that you were not supposed to create, then that's when Judaism has a problem. Let me tell you 4 stories fast, and then I'll take questions. There is a fascinating story. I think it's one of the most fascinating stories in all of the Talmud. If you want to check it out, it's in Masechet Sanhedrin. It deals with judgment. There was a very famous man named Shimon ben Shetach. He lived 2,200 years ago. And he lived in the land of Israel in a city called Ashkelon. I don't know if you've been in Israel. There's a beautiful city now, still Ashkelon by the water is absolutely beautiful. And this man, Shimon ben Shetach, what he did is in one day, he hanged 80 witches in one day. In one day, he found 80 witches and he hung them. So there is a lot of questions to this Talmud, to this piece of the Talmud. First of all, in Judaism, you're not allowed to kill 2 people in one day. No court is allowed to, unless they are completely different cases. By the way, in a Jewish court that kills 1 person in 70 years is considered a murderer's katlanit, a murderer's court. A Jewish court almost never killed anybody. So if they kill somebody in 70 years, they had a bad name called a Sanhedrin Katlanit, a murderer's court. So how is it possible that Shimon ben Shetach kills 80 witches in one day? So we're told that really it was an exception and it was very important. Why? We're told in the Talmud that these 80 witches were convincing thousands, I don't know if thousands, but many hundreds of Jewish women to start following idol worshiping and to become witches. And Shimon ben Shetach, which was the leader of the Jewish nation at that time, was very scared that this would bring thousands of women outside of Judaism for idol worshiping into witchcraft. So he hangs 80 witches in one day. So we have a proof here that there was such a thing as 80 as witches. Number one, we have a proof that it's forbidden because they were hung. And this is a fascinating story. There's another story that I want to share with you that I think is absolutely incredible. It's not in the Talmud. It's actually found in the prophets. There is a book of prophets called the King's Number 2, and it brings a fascinating story. There was a very famous prophet named Elisha. Elisha was a student of the famous Elijah the prophet. And Elisha, this great prophet, died. So what they did is they buried him, but he died in the road. So they didn't really make this incredible burial. They just dug a little ground on the floor and they buried Elisha and they kept on traveling. But right after they were traveling in the road, they were attacked by the enemies. and the Moabite nation attacked the Jewish nation, and they were slaughtering, killing men, women, children. And one of the men they slaughtered, this man fell backwards and fell on the grave of Elisha, of the great prophet Elisha. And the moment he fell on the grave, and the grave of the great prophet Elisha, which had been probably the greatest man of that time, the man who had just died falls in the grave. 20 seconds later, he stands up, completely healed from his scar, no bleeding, nothing. He continues to walk all the way to get to his town. He collapses and he dies. So all the rabbis, all the commentators are about it. What is going on here? This is a crazy story. What happened? So the answer is, this man who was killed by the Moabites, even though he was a Jew, he was a sinner. He was not such a good Jew. And he is not allowed to be buried with one of the greatest people that ever lived, to a great prophet. So therefore, listen to what God did. God, the moment he hits the grave of the prophet, he revives him, allows him to continue to walk a half a day. And then when he gets to his town, he dies and they bury him somewhere else. Why? You may not bury a righteous person with a wicked person. You cannot. It's forbidden. It's not proper for the righteous person. So therefore, they revived the Jew who wasn't a good guy. They let him live a half a day until he got to his town, and then he died, and then they bury him somewhere else. So many people said, no, that's not what happened. What happened is there were people there who were doing witchcraft, and says, no, I'm going to really tell you what happened. What happened is the prophet Elisha was capable of resurrecting other people. And there's many stories, there's not many, there is another story of how Elisha resurrected another human being. And what Elisha does over here, even though he's dead, he resurrects this guy saying, hey, this is my grave. I worked very hard to serve God. I'm going to resurrect you. You can walk a half a day and get yourself your own grave. And that's what really happened. Rabbi, you just told me that witchcraft is forbidden. So how is the prophet Elisha allowed to do this? It's a good question. So the answer is, I told you there are four worlds, which is the physical, the nature, what we call the supernatural world. And I told you in that world, there is what we call good and evil. And we live in boring times today because we don't have those incredible fights of good and evil. They used to see people, Moses flying and killing giants. People were able to say names of God, 72 letters, names of God, and destroy mountains. So we live in boring times. So why is it sometimes it's called Avodah Zarah and witchcraft, and sometimes it's called prophet? Why is there a difference? The difference is, if you believe that the power comes from God, and if you believe you're using the power to serve God and to help the Jewish nation, then it's prophecy. If you do not believe in God, you believe in the Satan, or you believe there is another power outside of God, and you are using this, so to speak, to wrestle the tool from God and use it, the gun against them, so to speak, or you're using supernatural powers to create new things that don't exist, that don't have angels, and you do not care about God, or you do not believe in God, and you want to create new powers, or you want to create new religions, then that's called sorcery, witchcraft, or idol worshiping. I'll give you one more story, and then I'll let you ask me questions. There is a story in the Talmud about three famous rabbis that would get together. They were Kabbalists, and they would get together every Friday night, and they would use names. God has 72 names. The creator of the world has 72 names. And if you know what name to use and how to say it, then you can create anything you want in the world. And these three rabbis would sit every Friday night, and they would use a 42 letter name of God, and they would create a calf. every Friday, they would take this calf, they would create out of nothing just by saying the names of God. They would take the calf, they would slaughter the calf, they would divide it into 3 parts, and each one would take home their part, and they would cook it for Shabbat, to have a nice meal for Shabbat. Rabbi, how is this permissible? How is this allowed? So, number one, they were doing it to serve God for Shabbat. Number two is they were using the names of God, saying the power belongs to God. And there are many other explanations like that. I will stop with the following, which I think is the most important thing that I need to explain to you. I told you about this man, king named Chizkiyahu. Chizkiyahu HaMelech, I told you, was a very righteous king. And what he did is he burned this copper snake because he didn't want people to follow idol worshiping. So please follow this is the punchline of everything, because I could go on for 2 more hours, but I don't want to bore you, but this is the most important thing. Chizkiyahu HaMelech this king also had a book. It's called the Sefer HaRefuot. He had a book that if you open this book, any sickness in the world that any human being would have, he would just open the book and look at the how to heal any human being. What does Chizkiyahu HaMelech do? After burning the copper snake, he takes this book of Refuot, of healings, and he burns it. Excuse me, is anybody following me? Why would such a righteous person, why such a great king, why such a holy man take a book that had the cure for COVID-19, the cure for cancer, the cure for Alzheimer's, the cure for diabetes, all these horrible things, multiple sclerosis, and a million other things that we have today, we have no idea how to cure. Why would King Chizkiyahu burn it? And they said there was the same reason. People stopped believing in God. They don't need God anymore. All they need is the book of the healing. And who needs God? So they forgot about God, and they were using just the book. So King Chizkiyahu said, I'm going to burn this book. So people return to God, and they realize that all the power comes from God. Now listen to the punchline, because I think this is unbelievable. So I studied this for a long time. Where did Chizkiyahu HaMelech come up with a book? Where did this king come up with to be able to come up with a book that had every medicine and every healing in the world? Where did that come from? Listen to the Kabbalah. This is unbelievable. The Kabbalistic, there was a famous man named Maram Rothenberg in Europe who wrote this Kabbalistic approach. And he said, if you remember this, raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. You remember the story of Noah? Yes? There was a flood in the world. Anybody raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about? There was a flood in the world. God destroyed the whole world. Well, right before he destroys the world, he asks Noah to build an ark. So what goes in the ark? So if I ask Rina, what was on the ark?
Animals.
Very good. Dylan, what else was in the ark? Dylan, what was in the ark, Dylan?
Abraham's family.
So he had
Noah's family, my bad.
Very good. He had his wife, he had his 3 children and then 3 wives. So there were 8 people, 8 humans there. And there were camels and there were cows and there were, etc., etc. Now, let me ask you something. What else was in the ark? There was a lot of food for the animals for 1 year. They lived there for almost a year. You know what else was in the ark? Demons, angels. And he took with them the demons and the angels. All the Kabbalists say that this is what happened. And the demons were very angry because they had been captured, so to speak, and put in an ark. It was like a jail for them. What do you think was going on in there between the demons and the angels? They were not getting along too well. And the demons would harm, usually they would harm Noah and his family. So finally, the head of all the angels, which is an angel that actually speaks to God, had to come down into the ark and put the demons in notice. Either you guys behave or you will be expelled from the ark and you will perish. So we see from here that there is such a thing as demons. We see from here there is such a thing as angels who fight demons. We see from here that we live in incredible boring times. I stop here and I'll take questions. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'hakol niyeh bidbaro.
I mean, we have a few questions in the chat. You guys can just pop in, whenever you are ready to share. You don't have to go in order.
I guess just because the last thing that he said, real quick about the angels and the demons, I put the question that aren't demons and angels more spirit, more like energy, they come down. How could
Maya,
they contain?
you mean more divine on the fourth level? No, God is the only one who's divine. They are more in the supernatural world. That's where they belong. In that third, I told you there's 4 worlds: the physical, the nature, the supernatural, and divine. They belong in the supernatural world.
But not the physical?
No, not the physical, not at all. They are not what we call physical, no.
Right, so how are they contained in an ark that they can't leave the ark?
Because they were forced by God. God used certain names to force them into the ark, to jail them, so to speak.
Oh, okay.
Very good question, Maya. Did I answer?
Why were some of them jailed in the ark and not all of them?
I don't think he wanted to save all of them. Why was only, you know how many animals were there? There was 7 pure animals, but there was only, 2 pairs of the other ones, camels or whatever.
Right, but you mentioned that one angel came down and made sure
Yes.
that they were behaving.
Yes,
That means that
yes.
one angel wasn't in the ark.
No,
And
that angel is a very powerful, it's called Metatron, and that angel Metatron belongs up there by the crowns. I told you there is two thrones of God. Metatron is the angel that serves the 2 thrones of God. He's allowed to be there, and he's the only one allowed to be there. And he came down specially to tell everybody, calmate, everybody drink a mojito, everybody have a little cerveza, everybody have a little piña colada. We're here for a while, enjoy the cruise. Thank you for flying Mexicana Airlines. And yeah, that's it.
So he's a supernatural being living in the divine world, but he's
Bravo.
an exception, basically.
Bravo. Amazing,
Okay.
Claire. Wow. This group is incredible. What's the next question? Come on, you must have questions. I have 60 questions.
In the very beginning, you mentioned that if there's spirituality in Torah, there also needs to be avodah zarah, negativity, and demons and stuff to balance that out. And that's what happened during the time of the Beit HaMikdash. So, and then it got destroyed, and both levels got deteriorated. So when Mashiach comes, obviously the level of Torah and spirituality is going to be heightened. And wouldn't that mean that also the level of avodah zarah would need to be heightened? How's that going to work?
That's an amazing question. That's Claire. That's unbelievable question. Amazing, unreal, absolutely beautiful. So to answer your question is no. There is a prayer that we say at the end of our prayers. Every time we pray 3 times a day, the last prayer is called the Aleinu Leshabeach. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I can send it to you if you want. And it says on it that so to speak, at the beginning of the world to come, at the end of the Messianic days, what happens is every knee will bow down, every tongue will praise God. That means there will not be idol worshiping, there will not be other religions. Every person in the world will acknowledge the creator of the world, the master of the universe, and that will be the end of it. That's it. That's what we believe called that's the beginning of what we believe it to be Olam Haba, the world to come. So no, there is not going to be, that's the end of all that. There is no more, there won't be need for any of that anymore. It will be clear to every human being in the world. Every Claire, where are you right now?
In Philadelphia.
Are you in school? Where are you?
I'm currently in my house, but I go to school.
Which school do you go to, Claire?
The College of New Jersey.
How many people go to the College of New Jersey, Claire?
Around 7,000.
7,000. So let me tell you something, Claire. Those 7,000 people, if the Messiah comes tomorrow, God willingly, everybody say amen. Amen. So Claire, if the Messiah comes tomorrow and the world to come is going to start out right after that, you know what the 7,000 people going to do? They're going to run after Claire Segal, and they're going to say to Claire, you're Jewish and you know a lot of Torah. You have an obligation to teach it to us. Claire, you are going to be so unbelievable busy because you're going to have 7,000 students. Nicole is going to have around 500,000 students, and I'm probably going to have around 10 million. And my rabbis are probably going to have 1 billion, each one of them.
Rabbi, oh, sorry, was that done? Can we go to the next one?
Claire, can we move on to Jessica Yerushalmi? I love that last. No, if not, I'm not moving. I'm not going anywhere.
Yes, please go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm not going anywhere until you're satisfied with the answer, Claire.
So I was assuming that was going to be the case, but if there needs to be a balance, then
Not anymore.
There's just going to be no more need for that balance.
Bravo, brilliant. The balance of purity and impurity has to be wear and tear for a human being to either do good or evil, and therefore that's what there has to be good and evil, angels and demons, temples and idol worshiping, etc., etc. You already know the rest. What happens? Why? Because God wants to reward you and punish you. But how can it reward you or punish you? So you have to be pulled this way, and based on your decisions and your actions, He can reward you and punish you. That's for the first 6,000 years of creation. Do you know what year we are right now? Anybody knows what year we are?
5782.
Bravo. 5782. So God has less than 240 years. Yes, 218 years left or whatever it is for the Messiah to come. That means the times for testing and reward and punishment only has 218 years left. And if the Messiah comes tomorrow, then that's the end of all the testing and all the reward and punishment. And then we begin to give reward. The world to come is where you take the soul and the body. We'll give a class one day, maybe about that, and you reward them. That's it. That's it. So there is no, all this that you and I are going through, all these difficulties, all these tribulations, all this will cease. There won't be more wear and tear because there won't be more good and evil. There'll only be good in the world because the whole world will accept God and the Messiah will come and the world to come will begin, which is the reward for those who were good. And there will also be punishment for those who are not good.
So there will be no more need for evil to exist.
There will not be what?
There will be no more need for evil to exist.
Bravo.
So
Bravo.
Goodness will be the default.
Bravo. By the way, wow, what you're talking about is, there is a book that is called The Das Tvunos by the Ramchal. It's probably the greatest philosophical masterpiece ever made. And the great, great sages in the world studied this. And you just understood one of the most important chapters in this incredible book. It's only taken me 40 years to understand.
I'm sorry, would you mind repeating the name of the book?
Sure. It's called, I'll try to figure out the name in English. It's called the Da'at Tebunot. I'll try to figure out the name in English. And give me 1 second. It's called the Das Tvunos by the Ramchal, by Rav Moshe Chaim Lutzato. I'll try to figure out the name in English. Okay. Claire, can we move to Jessica?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Rabbi. Thank you.
I love your last name.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I got such a boring last name. You like Yerushalmi. Oh my God, such a holy woman. Yes.
So my question kind of goes back to something we discussed earlier when we were talking about it being forbidden to kind of create these new species. I don't know if it applies in this sense, but say for things like IVF or kind of, fertilization outside of the womb and things like that. How does that apply to the rule of not kind of meddling in God's creation?
It is an amazing question, and a competent halachic authority should be asked. I'm not a competent halachic or authority. I'm just a fat, ugly Mexican. I have absolutely no knowledge of these things. But to make it short, if a woman wants to have children, certainly in Judaism it's permissible to seek a doctor and to try to get pregnant. There is not a problem with that in whatsoever. There are halachic considerations, which you and I, you can call me later on privately and I can tell you what they are, or we can do a class on it one day, but that's one thing. Now, you remember when these three rabbis created a calf and they would eat it for Shabbat? That's cloning. That's like cloning. So people ask, what do you mean? I thought we're not allowed to clone in Judaism. So that's an interesting concept. Cloning is taking I don't remember what was the name of that sheep or cow that they had in Ireland and they cloned. I forget what was her name. And that cloning is taking someone and making exactly a copy of that one. Yes, taking Jessica Yerushalmi and making a clone of her, that's not allowed. But what if I am inventing a new one that doesn't exist? Yes? So, and if I'm doing it to serve God, then that would be permissible. So that's what the rabbis were doing. They were not cloning. Cloning is not for, cloning in Judaism is not allowed. You are playing God. That's a very dangerous thing. When Ronald Reagan and eventually Bush, President Bush, they made laws against cloning, the rabbis, the great rabbis of the world were very happy. We're very happy because cloning brings tremendous problems to the world. You're playing God. You're really playing God. That's a very dangerous thing.
Is someone else next, or can I have a small follow-up question?
Sure, you can.
Why? Well, I kind of am figuring out the answer, but why give that ability only to? Well, it's kind of like I forget the name of Yetzer Hara. Kind of, could it be like that? Okay. Because the question was going to be why give the ability if you're going to forbid it, but I think I answered it. But if you could give your...
Do you want me to continue? Or?
Yeah, please.
Again, listen, it all comes down to, and Claire got this. This is very important. I'll go back to this many times in all our classes. The greatest gift that God ever gave humanity is free will, free choice. Period. You have free will. Jessica, where do you live right now?
New York, Long Island.
I got news for you. Nevada is cheaper. California is nicer. Florida, you'll save a lot of taxes. In Texas, you and I could learn more often. So you decided for whatever reason to remain and live in New York, in Long Island. That's your choice. You have the free will. Who you marry is your free will, where you live, you have a lot of free choices in life. That's your free will. God gave you that as a gift. It's the greatest gift God ever gave humanity. But listen, when you have free will, today yesterday I went to a funeral and I was there for hours and hours and hours helping these people. So, some of my friends went to a restaurant and they sat there and they ate for 2.5 hours and they're calling me and texting me, where are you? Why aren't you coming? I'm like, guys, I would love to hang out with you guys, but I think I'm doing something that is a little more divine, going back to these 4 worlds. What you're doing is something very physical. I'm trying to do something a little more divine, if I can ever reach the divine. So by using my free will, I hope that I will have a greater reward because of my actions. And again, it could go the other way. If you do something wrong, if you use your words to hurt a widow or an orphan, God is not going to be too very happy with you. Putin, I wouldn't want to be in Putin's shoes right now. Are you kidding me? You have the world, I'm not even talking about politics. I'm not even talking about all the punishments that the world is giving them and taking away fining them and banking fines. And I'm not talking about that. I'm saying I wouldn't want to be Putin after 120 years and go up to heavenly court and have to answer to God for all those widows, orphans, and men and children that died. That's that's a horrible thing. And I'm not getting into politics, and I'm just saying, these are lives he's playing with. And by the way, you know what I was doing today, right before I came here? I was in the synagogue. In my synagogue, we were praying for 100,000 Jews that live in Ukraine. That's what I was doing. I was praying. We were saying Tehillim. We were saying Psalms for them. So you have free will, so you can decide between good and bad. So you need to have free will to be rewarded or to be punished. But going back to Claire, all that will end by the world to come. I don't know if I answer your question, Jessica.
No, thank you.
Try a different way.
Thank you so much.
Oh, God. Woo. Yeah, next. No, I'm kidding. Yes, next question.
I have 2 quick questions.
Yes, David. I love the mustache.
Thanks. I figured out my computer doesn't like cameras, so I have to use my phone. But anyway, I was kind of wondering, the Golem, where does that fit in with the supernatural stuff? And my follow-up to that is, with the supernatural stuff, the demons and such, on those like ghost shows, they always show like, what is it, like Catholic priests doing the whole thing with the exorcism. So I was wondering, how would that work with Judaism? How would we do an exorcism? Like, would we just have a Jewish star and be like, the power of David, whatever, compels you? How would that work?
David, I love the questions. You asked so many questions. I could spend literally 8 hours just on those questions, but I'm not going to. I'm going to try to go very fast. We Jews believe in exorcism. Exorcism actually, it is true. It exists. Actually, there are great rabbis in Israel who have performed exorcism. It doesn't work anyway like in the movie Exorcist, that the head turns around like that. It is, what's exorcism is 2 souls in one body, and they're killing each other for the body. It's true. There is such a thing. And yes, there are cases of exorcism, and there are cases where rabbis have been called to do exorcism. It doesn't happen that often, David. There was one case in Israel around 7-8 years ago. And before that, I think there wasn't another case 40 years ago. It doesn't happen that often, David. How do they do it? They use names of God, Kabbalistic names and Kabbalistic rituals to remove one of the 2 souls who are fighting for one body. 2 souls in one body, they kill the body, they destroy the body. So they need to remove one of the 2 souls and let the other soul fight another body. That's really what's happening. So to answer your question, yes, there's such a thing as exorcism. Yes, Judaism performs exorcism. Not me. I'm not qualified. I've never been in one. I've never seen one. I've heard my rabbis talk about their rabbis performing exorcism. Yes. The other question that I'm sorry, what was the first thing you said? Please forgive me.
Where do golems fit into the supernatural? Are they more like demons or
No? No, beautiful question. We believe in golems. As a matter of fact, there was a famous man in Prague named the Maharal of Prague. If you ever go to Prague, there is a lot of stuff about the golem. It is real. The golem was real. And as a matter of fact, the first golem that ever lived was Adam Arishon, Adam and Eve. If you think about it, how was Adam created? God took a little dirt, yes, and what did he do? Beruach HaPav inserted on it, by using names of God, inserted the soul inside of it. And that's why Talmud asks a question. If Adam would be in your synagogue, could he be counted for 10 men? because Adam, the first human, wasn't really the first golem. So therefore, could a golem be counted as a 10 people in the minion? This is asked by the great sages in the world. Unbelievable question.
Oh,
So
Rabbi?
again, let me just one second,
Yeah.
one second. Calm down, everybody, 1 second. We believe in the golem, and the Maharal use there are very, how do you say truth in Hebrew? Anybody knows?
Emet.
Bravo, bravo, David. Now help me, David. Emet is Aleph, Mem, Tov. If you put the word emet in the golem, which is you mold a physical form out of, let's say, sand or dirt, and you put the word emet. Emet means truth. Is one of the names of God. Is the seal of God. I'm sorry, it's not the name of God. It's the seal of God. Emet, and that's how the Maharal, using many of the 72 names of God, turn a form of sand into a giant who would defend the Jewish nation in the city of Prague against their enemies who were slaughtering Jews. How does he remove the golem from walking around the streets? It takes the Aleph from his forehead, and there's only 2 letters left, Mem and Tov. What does Mem and Tov come together to, David?
Met. Death.
Met, death. So how does it bring him alive? By telling him it's true, this is real. And how does it get him back to death and removes him from running around the streets and scaring everybody? By removing the Aleph. It says Mem Tav, Mem Tov, it's met. It means he's dead now. All he had to do is either put an Aleph or remove an Aleph. What's an Aleph? Aleph means God. Without God, without the Aleph, the source of everything, this golem is dead. Do we believe in golem? Absolutely. Adam Arishon, Adam, the first human, he didn't start as a human, he started as a golem. Do we believe in golems? Yes. Do you see them running around the streets now? No. Did they exist? Were some people able to do it? Yes. The Vilna Gaon, the great Vilna Gaon, this giant from the city of Vilna, he said that he, at the age of 12, he already knew how to make a golem. I'm 55 and I don't know how to make a Zoom call. And all the science I learned it at the magic school was thanks to Mrs. Frizzo. So don't ask me to make a golem.
Rabbi,
Okay.
what is a golem? That's
Oh,
what
good. Thank you, Maya.
I didn't know. That's why I was.
No, you're right. I'm sorry, Maya. Please forgive
No,
me.
it's okay. It's okay.
No, you're right. I'm sorry. A golem is, we believe in the golem in Prague. If you Google the golem of Prague, or you will find, by the way, there are statues in Prague. Prague is one of the most beautiful, by the way, is the most underrated city in Europe. Prague is absolutely beautiful. It's so beautiful that Hitler did not allow Prague to be destroyed. That's how it was his favorite city in Europe. And there are bridges called the Golem Bridge. There are statues called the Golem Bridges. There are synagogues called the Golem Synagogue. There are hotels called the Golem Synagogues. Hotels. There are restaurants called the Golem restaurants in Prague. But everybody, even Gentiles, everybody knows about the Golem. What is the Golem? The Golem is, the Jews lived in a very, very difficult times because people started saying that Jews take the blood of Christian kids and they make matzahs out of it. And it went wild all over Europe. And so people went out on the streets. This was not true, absolutely not true. This is ridiculous. Who would want to eat a matzah with blood? That's disgusting. Number one, why would you even do something like that? That's mentally retarded. But anyway, this is how it's called a libel, and this is how they were trying to destroy Jews. And you know what? In the city of Prague, they were killing thousands of Jews. So the head of the Jewish community of Prague, this Rabbi Loeb, he was giant Kabbalist. He came up with the idea of creating a golem. He took a lot of dirt and ground and grass and created a monster, very, very big, and he put the names of God, including the Emet, the seal of God, and using many names of God, he brought him back to life. And he let him live for around a couple months. He got rid of all the enemies of the Jews, and then afterwards he took him out to his out of the synagogue and he locked him up in the special room, and he removed.
Jack, leaning that way, we couldn't hear what you were saying.
He took him up to the attic and removed the name of God from his forehead, and he removed the Aleph, and it said Met, that he died. And that's what that's it. That's the story of the famous golem. There has been other golems, but that's the most famous. Did I answer your question, David?
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Amazing questions. Okay, we have time for a couple more. Dylan, what happened to your hair? Why is it so short? Where is all that stuff there?
Oh, it's been cut recently, but it's going back.
Yes,
I can ask you the
Dylan.
same thing.
I don't know.
My question is, like you said, nowadays there aren't so many angels and demons. I'm curious if there are still like angels that are like coming into the physical world, or if they're just gone for good. Will they come back? Do we have angels that still like interfere with daily life? Anything like that?
Nicole, is one of the classes angels and demons?
That is, I think that's one of the ones in the series.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so-
Well, you'll answer that at a later time.
Don't worry, there's a whole class of angels and demons.
Okay, cool. And then I just want to say one more thing. Do you remember that conference we had last year? You and I Zoomed one-on-one. I told you about a personal problem of mine. Problem has been resolved. So thank you. Thanks to your help.
I didn't do anything, but I'm happy to hear that you are smiling. Baruch Hashem. Thanks be the master of the universe. Any other questions? Why is Rina so quiet? Why is Dahlia so quiet? Come on, Dahlia.
I'm listening. It's really interesting.
Girl, I only talk about interesting things.
That is truth.
Nothing? No questions, comments, jokes?
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yes, please go ahead, Sasha. How come
I
you
was
guys
just wondering.
show your beautiful faces? I got an ugly face and I'm showing it to everybody. What's going on over here? Don't worry, I'm just kidding. Yes, Sasha, what's the question?
Oh, I was just wondering about the books and like their position in the like if they're considered supernatural or if they're like, I know that they're considered like souls, usually fighting for like for control over a body usually, but
Yes.
Are they considered also like demons or just supernatural, or on what level?
No, we can talk a lot more later on about this, but sometimes a soul does not have a body. It's very complicated. I don't know if I ever told you this. That I actually met somebody. Believe it or not, I actually met somebody who had two souls, and she was dying because of this, and the rabbis had to remove one of the souls. I was not present when they did it, but I used to live in Baltimore. I was in a yeshiva called Ner Israel in Baltimore. I was around 18 years old, and I get called one day into the principal's office. This man was Rav Herman Newberg, one of the Torah giants of the world. And Rabbi Newberg had told me there was a Mexican family who had just come from Mexico, and they have a daughter who's around 18 years old. Her name is Dahlia, and she's very, very sick. And she was coming to Baltimore to come to Johns Hopkins University Hospital. I don't know if you ever heard of Johns Hopkins, one of the greatest, if not the best hospital in the world. And this girl in Mexico, they couldn't figure out what happened. One day she woke up and she couldn't walk, literally. Healthy, super healthy. This girl was I wouldn't say an athlete, but she used to do, what do they call these things the girls do? They roll around and jump in.
Gymnastics.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Gymnastics. And she was, I mean, I don't think she was an athlete, but she was pretty healthy. She used to do gymnastics, everything. And one day she wakes up and she tries to go to the morning to the bathroom and she just fell and her legs would not work. Nothing. And in Mexico, they couldn't figure out what it was. So they came to Baltimore and they didn't have anybody who spoke English. So the rabbi asked me if I would go and spend 2-3 days with them and help them find them housing, food, and walk with them to the hospital and help with the doctors to explain everything. So I said, sure. So for 3-4 days, 3 days became like a week. And for a week, I helped them find housing, cars, rental cars, food, clothing. It was the winter and Mexicans, they're freezing in Baltimore, snowing, ice. Anyways, to make it short, we got to the hospital and for 1 week, they did all kinds of tests and they came back, the greatest doctors in the world. They had no idea what was going on. So they went back to the rabbi and they said, what's going on? Even Johns Hopkins University cannot figure out what's going on. So the rabbi said, I want you, this is one of the greatest rabbis in the world. He said to them, I was in the room, I was present. I'm not making this up. I couldn't make this up even if I wanted to. The rabbi said to them, send somebody to your house in Mexico City and get me the mezuzahs. Raise your hand if you know what a mezuzah is. Bring me 2 mezuzahs, the mezuzah at the front door of the house and the mezuzah in Dalia's room, and bring it to my office ASAP. So they had a brother who was in Mexico. The brother took the mezuzah from the front door and took the mezuzah from Dalia's door and he UPS'd it or whatever it was called, DHL in that time. It took like a day and a half to get there. And I'm going back almost 30 years ago. And the rabbi looked at the mezuzahs and he said to the father, to the mother, to the daughter, and I was present, and another friend of mine was present. And the rabbi said, he says, the problem is we have a huge problem. I find in the mezuzah in her room, there are some letters, they are interconnected. And therefore, there is a problem. The mezuzah is pasul. The mezuzah is not good. We have to give a new mezuzah. But the mezuzah explains what her problem is, but I am not qualified. This is one of the greatest rabbis in the world said, I'm not qualified to tell you what's the problem. You got to get on a plane. You got to travel to Jerusalem and you have to go meet a Rav Kaduri. Rav Kaduri was the head of all the Kabbalists in the world. A very, very old man, very, very old man who was a Kabbalist. He was the teacher of all the Kabbalists in the world. You go to him, I will call him, tell him to expect you. And they did. They took the mezuzah. They went to Israel. I did not go with them. They went to Israel. They showed the mezuzah to the Kabbalist. And this was the greatest Kabbalist. He passed away like 4 years ago. So Rav Kaduri died at the age of 102 years old, a very holy man. This man told them, he says, I will tell you what happened. I seen the mezuzah, what happened. I'm going to tell you the story and you will tell me if what I say is true. He said, he looks at the mother and he says to the mother, you had a baby right before this one, before this girl. And you named that girl Yemi. And that girl Yemi died after 3 months or 4 months, I don't remember. And then 9 months later, or 10 months later, whatever it was, you had another child, which is this one. And you named her again Yemi, the same name. So this body has the 2 souls of the 2 sisters fighting for the body. We have to get rid of the first soul because it's killing the body. So the first thing is he wrote a new mezuzah. The second thing is he changed her name from Yemi to Dalia in front of 10 people. And after that, she started walking, not perfectly. She kept on, for the rest of her life, she walked, but with a crutcher, with a walker. She was never perfect anymore, and she couldn't have children. She never had children. She still lives today. She lives outside Jerusalem, and she's friendly with my sister. My sister spoke to her before COVID. So not only do I know someone, I really know someone. Yes, Maya.
I have a similar story, but different at the same time. My uncle, he had a heart attack, and so his rabbi asked him, "Well, have you gotten your mezuzahs checked recently?" And he had said no, and then he had them checked, and the only two letters that were messed up spelled heart. So that was really interesting to see. And obviously, he got his mezuzahs fixed and everything, but yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Okay. Last question, because the Mexican needs his beauty rest. No, I'm kidding. Any last questions, comments, jokes, recipes?
I have one more question. If
Yes,
no one else
Claire.
has one. So
Where
you
do you get your
mentioned-
glasses? I like your glasses.
Thank you. So you mentioned, so I know that like a Jewish court was considered murderous court if they killed someone once every 70 years, but you mentioned that you couldn't kill two people in one day. And I was wondering, first of all, why? And then also you mentioned that you can actually kill two people in one day if the cases are like completely unrelated. So the first question is, why not two people one day? And the second one, why can you if they're like completely unrelated?
So the reason why not is because we don't want the judges to confuse the cases or not pay enough attention to the cases if they're similar. They may look similar, but it's never exactly the same. Unless, when are you allowed to do two cases, is if they're completely different. One may be monetary and another one might be something completely different, then it's permissible. But if both of them are, let's say, monetary, and both of them have to do with real estate, both of them have to do with land, and both of them have to do with vineyards, then for sure you're not allowed to, because they might look so similar that you might miss the nuances, the differences in between both of them. And we want judges to be fair, and we want judges to be honest and do a good job. Did I answer the question?
Yeah. But yeah.
No. So, but what? Tell me.
No. That was it. It's good. Thank you.
No, please. So I'll keep on going and I'll try.
No, I just had to like mentally review it.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Laila Tov. Gracias. You guys are amazing. I'm honored to learn with you people. And God bless you. And you guys are truly, truly amazing. And I'm sorry I could have gone much more. I just had to be very picky what to choose to give you a couple stories and something interesting and not to make you fall asleep. And it's honestly a complicated subject, but I'm honored to learn with you guys.